we had no experience on the sector, okay? We had no experience on raw materials. We had no experience on this kind of machines. We had no experience on this market. The only experience were on the textile.
As part of the Reservist project, the Textile ETP organized a webinar where key stakeholders from the European textile sector shared their experiences and discussed the lessons learned and the challenges they faced during the COVID-19 pandemic. The European textile sector suffered significant losses and supply chain disruptions due to the urgent need to produce PPE and other medical textile products, and the overwhelming demand for testing and certification services. Keeping sustainability in mind and avoiding unnecessary waste creation remained a priority for this SME-heavy industry, but manufacturers who converted production to face masks and other protective equipment faced tough competition from non-European suppliers, without sufficient support from EU policymakers for local manufacturing. In the webinar, CEOs of 3 textile SMEs from Spain and France shared their experience, challenges on the market, and good practices that helped them through the pandemic. We also heard the experience of a research technology center, as the heavy demand on PPE testing and certification, and all-around crisis situation was also a difficult period for them. Finally, we discussed with a French cluster that introduced the network activation across the local textile supply chain and authorities that made them invaluable in crisis management. Spanish SME Mila Rosa invested in new equipment to adapt their lines to face mask production, for which they also received EU funding. However, once the masks were ready, authorities opted to purchase masks from Asia.
Everybody must to say clearly to the European community that if they give us some help to buy machines, and after they continue buying to other countries, they are destroying again this. There is not, I cannot understand why they help me on that moment to buy machines and to arrive to have one capacity of 1 million per week and 250,000 in FFP2 to produce gowns, to produce caps, and buy a logistic and a plant to produce all these products with guarantee. And after they forget everything. So I think the lesson for them now was good. This is actually the situation that we have on the market and nothing else.
For the French SME Mitwell Textiles, the key to success under a heavy demand to mass-produce face masks on as very short notice was that they could fall back on their network of suppliers and partners.
2 weeks after the beginning of the production, we have inquiries informed from around for a turnover of 200 million euro turnover. So, which was natural, of course, not possible, but we managed over the only 3 or 4 weeks to produce for around 13 million mask, and this was only because we had a network which was working very well.
Spanish SME Liasa is specialized in elastic cord and rope production for different industrial uses, but had no experience in medical products. When the pandemic hit, they had to reinvent themselves and adapt their production to meet the market needs, so they started producing elastic bands for face masks.
Well, we had no experience on the sector, okay? We had no experience on raw materials. We had no experience on this kind of machines. We had no experience on this market. The only experience were on the textile. Then we know how to manage with yarns and to create and being innovative. That was what we had as a know-how of this market.
Research technology and testing centers were overloaded and often challenged by demands from new mass producers, whose lack of experience led to occupying testing capacity with products which would clearly not meet certification criteria.
There are definitely also a shortage in accredited test lab, and this is a procedure that remind you, you don't just decide to be an accredited test lab today and tomorrow you become one. It is really like a management journey. You just have to make sure that you are, the way you are working, the environment, how you manage the information. So it's really a heavy process, and it's also costly for most research facilities or companies. Different companies wanted also to contribute. So many start wanting to produce masks, but then without any idea about the testing and certification. So there were also a lot of requests coming from for testing lab of products that they want to test. But yeah, if you take most of the capacity to test masks that are definitely not compliant, then you actually kind of wasting the capacity for the other masks that could also be tested also faster.
The pandemic highlighted the need for synergies among regions and across borders, but also with other sectors, to efficiently organize and produce PPE in time of crises. Clusters played a key role in activating these networks, but there is a clear need for more clusters to fill the gaps.
One of the main results for clusters and from expectation from the companies is that the clusters have done what they are doing for. Which is basically networking. So clusters, where they exist, successfully has been in charge to speed up the network between the companies and between companies and research organization and between companies and research organization with the local or national authorities, which was really good because it's really the main purpose of clusters. Unfortunately, there's no clusters everywhere. There's no clusters for every companies. There's no clusters for every textile companies. So perhaps one important issue will be also that clusters should probably go further their local or regional dimension, trying to develop either at national level or either cross-border in order to go further their existing frameworks.
There are several recurring keywords that reflect the European textile industry's experience during the COVID pandemic, which suggest how to better prepare for future crisis situations. During a crisis, addressing needs and challenges locally leads to quick actions and fast solutions, while keeping interventions on a manageable scale. A well-functioning network across stakeholders and, if needed, across borders is crucial for efficient crisis management. This was evident in the textile industry, as companies that had extended and well-functioning networks throughout the supply chain could quickly adjust their production profiles to start producing PPE. The industry also calls for better planning, coordination, and standardization on a European level. European standards for testing and certification would contribute to clearer guidelines, more transparency, and faster progress. Lastly, access to up-to-date information is crucial during a crisis. Clear information from credible and transparent sources fuels fast and efficient decision-making to minimize damage and risks.